So last week we do have a discussion on properties and how properties will help in our class variable class member variable declaration. So that's all we have seen. With the properties, we can able to provide the kind of restrictions while assigning the values or while retrieving the values. That way we can use these properties. And after that we have seen with the help of properties we can make particular member variables of a class as read-only. Okay, so that's all we have seen with this properties concept. Now we have one important concept in C# language which is related to the class. Here is constructors. So let's see what is this constructor and how many types of constructors are there. So we will see one by one so that you can have an understanding of what is constructor and usage of constructors as well. So before jumping into the constructors, let me give a kind of idea how the constructor will useful for us, so that we can extend our explanation here. Okay. So before doing that, what I will do is remove this one. So these are all properties which we have seen. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to create one class. My class name is product. So my class name is product. So we have seen we can able to create the properties for that. So simple way to create the properties is if you prepare like this prop, double click it, it will create the property for us. So we can edit our property name, same saying that product ID, product ID, and if you double click. Product name, and other thing is product name is a type of string. Product
number.
price we will take. Product price we will take, which is some kind of float we can declare it. Okay, this is all. This is a simple class where I have the member variables of three member variables or member variables I have declared. So one is product ID, product name, and product price. So in order to assign a value to your member variables, there are couple of ways are there. In order to assign values to your class member variables, there are several types are there. So one way is what we can do is we can able to create a object for that particular class product obj prod, okay, equal to new product. Like this we can create an object for our class. With this object obj prod, then I can able to access my member variables as those are the public member variables. Then what I can do is I can assign a value to my member variables like this. Product ID dot product sorry object dot product ID equal to 1. Similarly, object dot product name equal to something like ABC. Okay, so obj product dot product price. So I can enter it's kind of 10,000 or something like this. Okay. This is how we can assign the values to my member variables of a class, right? Muzaffar?
Yes, yes, I'm listening.
Yes. So basically, how we can assign a values to our class here is
Create an object.
we can create one. We need to create the object for our class. With that object, if those member variables are public member variables, then I can able to access and I can assign the values to that particular member variables. Okay,
Yes.
so this is how we have seen previously. So assume that assume consider this as a method one.
Yep.
Method one. Okay, so we'll see is there any other method are available or not. Okay, this is a method one. Okay,
Yep.
so another method what we have is for example I have a member variables. For this member variables inside the class only I can able to assign. For example, see here itself instead of doing like this, I can assign one. Okay,
Yes.
here itself I can assign ABC. Here itself what I can do is I can assign the price as this one. Now what I can do here I can able to assign the price like this. So if someone try to write one method by create if even this case, if I create the object, I can assign the value to product and DEF as a product name and 20,000 as a product price. Like that we can able to do it. Okay, even though I have
Change the values.
yes, we can able to change those values. Even though by default if you create the values, we can able to change the values here. Okay, so this is one way, and assigning the direct values to your class members, this is the method two. So we can consider this as a method two. Okay, now the other scenario what we have is in our C# programming to initialize our member variables here is through the constructor we can able to do that. Okay, through the constructor we can able to do that. Let's see how we can do such kind of behavior here. So what I'm going to do here is public product product integer sorry uh, integer id string name float price. I'm creating one method in such a way. Okay, so let them so this is method 2, right?
Yep.
uh, Control C, third one sorry.
In third method also we use in constructor get and check Madan.
Yeah, without these also we can able to do. So I will explain one by one. So
Okay.
basically, I am going to comment this one. So for our example, so I just explained to you. This is one way to declare the to give the direct values to your member variables. Okay.
Yeah.
So these are my particular member variables. So I'm going to create one method with the name product. Okay, and it accepting the three parameters here. Okay, integer id, string name, float price. Once it accepting the values from some from outside of the class, it gonna assign these values to your particular member variables. This name is going to be assigned to the product name, and whatever the product price we have, it is going to get the value from this price. Okay, so this is how I'm just creating one method. This method is going to accept three kind of parameters, which is
Mm-hmm.
integer id, string name, float price. This id value, whoever giving this value, so some from outside of the program, whatever the value we are going to give this id, it is going to assign to this variable. This name is going to assign to this variable. This price is going to assign this product price variable,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Now instead of this is method one, what we discussed, right? Comment this
Yes.
one. And another way of assigning the member variables is method
Method
3.
three.
2 we already seen. 3 now we are going to cover here. Product, object product equal to new product. Okay. Here it's asking that number of parameters. So what parameters it asking? ID it asking, string it is asking, sorry, name it is asking, price it is asking. Instead of passing like this, I'm going to pass 3 GHI, GHI, and price I'm going to enter as 30,000.
Okay.
Now what will happen? These three values will go and assign to these variables
Yes.
individually. Got it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is how this is the this is how constructors will help us to provide the values to your member variables. So this is the general definition. So what is the constructor here is constructor is a special method in C#.NET which is same as class name, which is same name as a class name. So here my method name, if you observe, which is same as my class name. It is not a normal method here. This is not a normal method. It's a special type of method which name same as a class name, and it is useful to assign the values to your member variables. It is
Okay.
useful to assign the values to your member variables. Okay. So how the constructor will help us in our programming is, so I guess Raj just joined here. Raj, we are just discussing the concept of a constructor here. So I'm just explaining how we can assign the values to our class members. So basically we have created three member variables: product ID, product name, product price. In method 1, how we are assigning those values is, so by creating the object for my product class, I'm going to assign the values like this: object dot product ID equal to 2, object dot product name equal to ABC, object dot product price equal to 10,000. Like that, we are able to assign the values to our member variables. And other way, how we can assign the values to our member variables is, we can declare the values, we can declare the member variables, and we can directly assign the values to our member variables. So this is the another way. And the third way, what we have to assign the values to our member variables is, we can create a method. By using that method, we can pass the values to the member variables of a class. This method is nothing but a constructor in C#.NET. Whatever the method we are going to use to assign the values to our member variables, that method is called as a constructor. So how simply we can define a constructor is, constructor is a method. So here we can say like special type of method. It's not a just normal method. Constructor is a special type of method available in C#.NET in order to assign the values to our class member variables. So that is the like lowest definition what we can give the constructor here. Okay. So Muzaffar or Raj, did you guys understand?
Yes, Madan.
Mhm.
Constructor is a special type of method
Yeah.
which is used for declaring member variables.
Yes, so that's the definition of a constructor. Why we are saying this is a special method? See, my method name is same name of my class. Okay. So in any class, for example, if you open any kind of project, in that project, if you see any of the class where if you identify any method having the same name of a class, then you can easily identify that that's a constructor. Okay. So in any of the class, if you see a method which is similar name of a class, that will be called as constructor. So there is no other word for that. It's a just constructor what we are calling. This constructor is useful to help to assign the values to our member variables. Okay, so that's a constructor. So that's a definition of a constructor and the usage of a constructor. Now, now we need to discuss how many types of constructors are there in C#.NET. Okay, how many types of constructors are there in C#.NET and what are the use of those constructors. Okay, so let's see. First type of constructor what we have in C#.NET is a default constructor. The first type of constructor what we have in our C#.NET is a default constructor. So what is this default constructor is? If I declare a constructor without taking any parameters, if I declare a constructor without taking any parameter, that will be called as default constructor. So how we can declare this one? So this is the another type of constructor. I will explain later. Put it like this. Let's talk about default constructor. Default constructor. So how we can define a default constructor is, so to define a constructor, let's first explain the concept of define a constructor. To define a constructor, so we need a public keyword. Okay, we need
Method name.
name of the class. okay, and number of parameters. This is how we can declare a constructor. But how we declare a method, Muzaffar or Ras? How we can declare a method? Do you guys know how to declare a method? Method, method declaration.
Method method declaration, access specifier,
Yes,
access
access
modi
specifier like public,
method name,
method
sorry,
name,
return or return type,
yeah, return type. Okay,
and
method name, get data,
get
something
data
like this. Okay, or print whatever it is. Okay, get data
and parameters.
and whatever the parameters we pass and the opening and closing parentheses.
Body.
So sorry, opening and closing braces here. So this is the
Brace.
constructor. This is the method. Is there any difference between this and this? These two.
But only return type is not there.
Yes, yes. So basically, if you let's see how it will work. So let's put like this only, and I'm going to give the return type here. So here, let's comment this one. Product equal to new product. So this is how. Let's try to compile this. Build. See, in closing. So see, we are getting an error, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the problem here, the problem here is we just use this return type while declaring the constructor. So it's not a method. It's not a like a normal method here to return something from that particular method.
Okay.
Okay. So if I declare a method, there is a chance of return something to that particular method, right? But this constructor is not a uh, normal method. It's a special type of method which will use only for declaring, sorry, only for initializing the values for our class members. Okay. So if that is the case, there is no chance of return something from my constructor. So we are assigning the values to our member variables. Then what is the need of, or what is the particular way of returning something from that constructor? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's why only difference between the method and the constructor here is the declaration part is very similar to the method declaration. Why? Because we are saying that constructor is nothing but a method. Okay, but only difference what we have here is to declare a constructor, the name of the method need to same as the class name, but we no need to use this particular return type while declaring a constructor. So let's try to build this. So now it got built successfully, right? We
Yep.
didn't get any error. So previously we used to get error. At that time, what we done mistake here is we add the return type for our constructor, which is not allowed in our C# programming. Okay, so that's why I just want to give the kind of difference between the normal method and the constructor. Okay, so hope you guys understood here. So this is the default constructor. So let's try with the default constructor. I just gave the example how we can declare a constructor. So the declaration of a constructor is very straightforward. We need to have an access modifier and the name of the class, number of parameter, and the body of our constructor. So that's all we can. That's all we can have the constructor. So for
Yeah, but
every class, even though we create or not create, even though we create the constructor or not create the constructor, by default it has one constructor which is called as default constructor. By default,
okay.
any class can have one constructor which is the default constructor. So how we are saying that is the default constructor is it will not take any parameters. Okay, so if something written, if you by default if you want to assign some kind of values, then you can use your default constructor. Okay, so let's see the difference between the default constructor and parameter constructor here. Okay, so how default constructor will work here is straightforward of this example. So if I have this one, so I can pass the product ID, product ID as 4 and product name as PQR, product price as this one. See, is there any difference between this method too and this one? No, right? Here also we are directly giving the values. By default we are passing the values. Here also in method 2 also we are doing the direct assignment. So if I want to, if I have a class, by default I want to provide some kind of default values to my class members. Then we can use this one. So when this gonna be called here is whenever you create the object like this, see here we are mentioning that opening and closing parenthesis. Thus parenthesis representing the default constructor. So it's not taking any parameters. It's not taking any parameter here. So that's why whenever you create the a object for our class, by default one constructor will call and it will execute our programming. So that constructor is called as a default constructor. Even though you haven't defined that constructor, by default class have that one. Even if you see here right now, we have created this kind of default constructor. Even though if we comment this line of code, still we can able to create the object with no parameters, right? Still we can able to create the object with no parameters. That's how it will possible in C# program is even though you haven't or we haven't defined the constructor for our class, by default it has one constructor. That's called as a default constructor. That is called as a default constructor. So Muzaffar or Raj, having any questions?
Why do we use option string as
Where it is?
in the top while we are assigning values?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, while assigning the value product name, product ID.
Okay. So what is the question here?
Not a go top, go up.
Okay.
So here, why are you using public string product ID method 2? Method 2. Come method 2. Yeah,
Yes.
string down string. Yeah,
Public
different type data type. We are using different data types, right? Public string int flat. Why
float.
are not using last default constructor also?
Yeah, we can use it while explaining this. I just told that we have one more method here to declare the values. So I'm
Okay.
explaining one by one. So first we start with the method 1. which we can declare the values. Okay, and to in this method to assign the values to my member variables, what we did, we create the object and we directly passing the values like this. This is the method one. Okay,
But
and a
but
method two, sorry,
but we are not using the data types, right? Why we are not using data types, right? You
where we
just
are
told
not using data types.
last method, default constructor method.
Default constructor, we already declared the same variables. We are using same variables, but we are
Okay.
assigning the values in the constructor instead of directly assigning the values like this. Through the
Okay.
constructor, we are assigning
Okay.
the
But we are
default.
declaring the what you say this integer string float at the member variables at the top of the class
Correct.
product. Okay.
For the spot, let me repeat one more time. Let's start with the method one, Muzaffar and Ras, for better understanding for both of you guys. So I have a class and I want to declare the some member variables inside the class. So how we can declare? So class declaration is straightforward. Class and the name of the class and the opening and closing braces, and inside that we can declare the variables. So those are we are calling as member variables. So if you declare the member variables, if you haven't assigned the any values to that, it's an unused one. So if you declare some variables and if it is not useful, then those are unuseful in our programming. In order to use that one, what we did is, in order to assign the values to that one, in method one, what we tried is, we create the object, and while after creation of object, with that object we are trying to access our member variables, and we are trying to assign the values to our member variables. This is the first method which is useful to assign the values to our member variables. Okay, so this is the first method. And after that, we have seen one more method here saying that directly assigning the values to our member variables. Once declaration itself, while declaration itself, I am providing my default values. Product ID equal to 1, product name equal to ABC, and product price equal 100. Okay, so if I write any kind of method where I want to print the values, as I already give the 1 ABC and 1000, so that will automatically print here because we already gave default values. That's the method 2 here. And method 3, what we are trying here is, we are creating one method. Okay, this is called as, let's try, this is method 3. Two methods we have already seen, and the third method we are trying to explain here. So in order to explain the third method, what I did is I just create one method with the name with the same name of a class, and I pass the three parameters. I pass the three parameters. One is ID string name. Sorry, ID string. Sorry, ID name and the price are three parameters here. So while declaring the object for my particular class, as this is a constructor, now we need to pass the values like this: 3 GHI 30,000. Now what will happen? This 3 GHI and 30,000 will come here as ID, name and price. Those will be assigned to our variables. This is the method 3. That method 3, we are calling it as a constructor. So while explaining the constructor, I'm saying that constructor is a special method which is having the same name of a class, and it is useful to initialize the values of a member variables. That's the thing. So here there are types of constructors are there. So the example what I have seen is one type. So before explaining the this type of constructor, so I just want to start from scratch with the types of constructor. There are types of constructors. There are different types of constructors available in C Sharp. So we can start with the default constructor. What is this default constructor in C Sharp programming here is that default constructor will help us to provide the default values. Default values. So if someone create the object for your class, automatically product ID will become the 4, product name will become the PQR, and product price will become the 4500. That will automatically will assign because this is the default constructor. Once you create the object by without passing any parameter, our default constructor will execute. It will assign the values to your member variables. This is the importance of a default constructor. Okay, so for our better understanding, what I am going to do here is I am writing one more method here, or here itself what I am going to do is console.writeLine product name what I'm going to give product ID so 0, product name is 1, product price is 2. So here what we can do is p dot product ID, p dot product name, p dot product price. Okay, so if I call this method, I'm going I create one method, and I create one object. With this object, what will happen automatically as we create the default value? So the default constructor, this gonna be called here. While once you create the object itself, default constructor will call for PQR 4500 assigned respectively, and we are printing those values. Let's see how the print statement will work here. So automatically when we are creating the object, automatically default constructor is getting called and it is getting execute, and product ID will become the 4, product name will become the PQR, product price will become the 4500. So this is how it works. So again what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the one more object. I'm going to create one more object. With this object name I am going to give it P1. Here I am calling this P1 dot method. So product ID, P2 P1 dot product name, and P1 dot product price. Again I am going to execute. So first time it get called and the second time it get called. Now I got the two console write line statements. One is same. Why? Because by default I provide these values. So how many objects you are creating, those many constructor will call, and those many default values it will assign. Okay, but for each and every object I want to provide the for some other values, different values. For each and every creation of a object, I want to provide the different values to my variables. Will it possible with this default constructor? For example, I want to create 10 objects for my class product. Each and every object, I want to give the product ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 like this. Will it possible by using the this default constructor?
No.
that default constructor will only help us to provide default values for our member variables. Whenever I create the object, the default values will be assigned. That's the same for all the objects. Whenever you create the object for your class, those default values will get assigned. Okay, so in order to provide the some kind of different values based on my interest to the member variables, what I can do is I can create one I can create one more constructor with the name, with the same name of a method name, but here I am passing the values like this: product ID, product names, and price. So now what will happen is I'm going to create the one more object here. Here I'm passing that this is P2. Value I'm passing this as a 7, and name I'm passing as XYZ, and here I'm passing this as price as 20,000. If I call my member variables with this object P2, what will happen? These values only will print. Will not print the default values. This will not print these default values. So again, if I create the one more object P3 by passing 8 and the name as something and price as something, if I call those member variables with this P3, these values only will print. Let's see how it will work. For example, close this. So comment this one. This is P3. Here I am giving as 9. This value as MNO. This is 3000 or 30,000 I am giving. 3, 3, 3. If I try to execute my, have I get the same output here?
Different now.
Different only, right? Because we are not using the default constructor. If I use the default constructor, the values always will be the same only. Because in our constructor, we specify that if someone call it as a default, go and assign these values. That I by default I specified like this. Okay, so if someone trying to give the values with their interest, then we need to create one more constructor which is called as parameter constructor. Okay, by passing the parameters where end user can have the ability to assign the values with their interest. Okay, for example, I am the end user. I'm calling this particular product. I'm creating an object for my particular product class. I'm giving my values, and if you are creating the object for your particular for the particular product class, you can give your inputs. So that need to be catch, and that need to be assigned to the member variables. So in order to do that, we need to have the one more type of constructor which is called as parameter constructor. So that parameter in that parameter constructor, we can define the member of you can define the parameters or arguments which will be useful to assign the values. Okay, so that is called as a parameter constructor. So default constructor will always assign the default values to our member variables, but parameter constructor will help us to assign the different values to our members. So that's how we did here. So this is here in this model. For this particular model, what we did is we call the default constructor. How many objects create, that's irrespective. Same values will be assigned in the default constructor. So if I create the one constructor with parameter constructor by passing the values, so each and every object I can provide the different values. So that's where we can make use of default constructor. Sorry, default and the parameter constructor. Okay. So let's stop here and try with the example so that you guys can have the understanding. I'm going to close. I'm going to clear everything. Now I'm going to clear this one as well. Yeah. Now the question is, I want to have a constructor. Sorry, I want to have a customer class, and inside that I need to have a customer ID, customer name, and customer ID, customer name, and what is the other field we can use? ID, name, and address. 3 fields. ID,
Yeah.
name, and address. 3 fields we need to define for a class which is named as customer. So try with the method 1 first, okay, and later we will define the method 2. Sorry, we will follow with the method 2 approach, and after that we will follow with the default constructor, and after that we will follow with the parameter constructor.
Okay, no problem.
So so that you can able to understand what I have
You
done.
can get
Yeah.
till now.
So yes. So let's try with the class declaration or creation. So someone help
Class,
me. Class
class name customer
customer
class customer info.
customer. Okay. So how we can declare the member variables?
For first one is customer ID. So
So
public int
public
So public in customer ID.
int customer
customer
ID,
ID
customer ID. Okay, this is one variable, and
Product name,
public
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 string,
string
string
product name,
customer name
customer name, string customer name, and other variable address, customer address. Public,
public
again it is the string,
string, yeah,
address
customer
address.
address. Okay. So now I want to assign the values to my class members. So let's start with the method 1. So method 1.
Yeah, method.
So method 1, how we can assign
We can need to create an object
for
for
our
the
customer
customer
class?
class, and we can retrieve the
Yeah, customer
customer
obj cust
cust
is equal to new
dot
customer.
custom.
customer.
Okay. So here with this object name dot customer ID equal to, I can pass some value, and
Okay.
object dot customer name, I can pass some value. So ABC. So again object dot customer address equal to ABC address. I can pass like this, ABC SS. Okay. Now I can write one console write line program. So method console dot write line customer name.
Customer
Yeah, customer ID customer ID
then
0,
0, customer name 1,
customer name 1, customer address 2, and comma. So
p
our
dot
object name is obj cust dot
dot
customer
customer
ID
ID.
comma
obj dot customer name.
obj cust dot customer name comma customer dot customer address. So this is how we can declare. And if I try to
See,
execute, and we can able to see the output. Customer ID is 1, customer name is ABC, customer address is ABC address. Okay, so this is how this is work. This is a method 1 of assigning the values to our member variables. Okay, let's comment
okay.
it. Okay, let's comment it here. So
Nice.
and method 2.
Method.
Method 2, what we can do is this is method 1. Okay, so in method 2, how we can do? Method 2, we declare, we discussed as directly we can pass the values here. So how we can
Yeah,
do it? Here itself,
customer
E
yeah,
equal to
4 or
2
something like this. Yeah, 2. Here address, I can give it
custard
DEF.
DEF
So here I can give it
DEF
DEF
address.
address. Okay. Now if I try to execute by creating the object, let's, this is the method 1. From here to here, consider this as a method 1. Copy
Yep.
this so that it will be clear for us. These are the useful for method 2.
Yep.
Method 2, this is method 2. So we no need assign the values here in
Value.
this method.
Directly we need to get the
Okay.
object.
So once we create the object, and if I execute this one to DEF address. So
Yep.
again, if I create the object, so again, if they create the object, same values I can able to get it. So
Yes.
I'm
We can pass here also.
here also. If you see, I'm
Yeah.
I'm giving the 1 as my object name. This is one object I create my customer class. This is the another object I'm creating to my customer class. Here, if I
Yeah.
pass this one, this one,
This is, it's a default
this one,
construct.
this is similar to the default constructor only. So same
Yeah.
I can have it. Same values only I can get. How many object you create, that doesn't matter. All object will take these default values only.
Okay.
Okay. So this is how this will work. This is a method 2. So this is method 2 here. Okay.
Yep.
Now the thing is another way how we can declare. Okay. So how we can declare the other method is by using the constructor. So let's see the by default constructor only we can see it. Instead of taking this one, what I'm going to do is this is method 3. Method 3. I'm declaring the values. Okay, but I'm not assigning the values directly here. Instead of directly assigning the values here,
Yep.
what I will do is I'm going to create one
One
special
more.
method with the name of my class name. So without passing value parameters. Okay. and whatever the values I want to assign, customer ID, here I'm giving this as 5 or 3 as per the sequence. I can give it as 3. Customer name, I can give it as GHI. Customer name, sorry, customer address, I can give it as GHI address. Okay. Now what happened? So same method 2 I can use it. So this is method 2. Let's comment these two. This is method 3. So same. If I go and execute, what will happen? 3 GHI GHI. Okay. So because
Default constructor.
we gave the default constructor. Instead of assigning like this, what we did is we create one method with the same name of class name, and we are assigning the values like this. There is no difference this and this in terms of assigning the values. But here we are directly assigning the values. But here we are through the constructor we are assigning the values.
Okay.
So if I execute method 2, I got the same output. Okay, if I execute method 3, I got the same output because the thing is here the default constructor will provide the default values to our member variables. In method 2 also we are providing the default values.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how this method 3 will work. Now the method 4 what I'm trying to explain here is so control C. Okay, and method 4 here I want to get the different values while creating the object. Now what I need to do
Okay.
is I can declare my values like this. So it's a string name,
Name.
string address.
Add.
Okay. So now I instead of default values, instead of 3, what I'm passing? This ID.
ID. ID.
Okay. Instead of name, instead of this default GHI, I'm passing name. Instead of default GHI address, I'm passing it as address here. Now
Yes.
here
Is that a default constructor?
is this. What is it?
Default
No,
constructor.
no.
Default
Default
constructor.
constructor is this one. By default, it will provide the same values.
Same thing we can do for default constructor by giving that by passing parameters in
Yeah,
method.
that is called as a parameter constructor. This is we can do it. So if you haven't passed any parameter, then it is called as default constructor. If you pass the parameter, we are calling it some other name.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, whatever you saying, I completely understand. For example, if I have a method that name is ABC, and if
Okay.
I may or may not pass the parameters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you were saying. Like if I have a method here,
Okay.
sometimes I may pass the parameter, and sometimes I may not pass the parameter. But in
But we'll
terms
accept.
but in terms of calling that method will be the same. But here in terms of constructor, if you haven't passed any parameter, we are giving one name for that, which is called as default constructor.
Mm-hmm.
We are giving one name. We are calling that constructor with one name is called as a default constructor. If I pass the parameter like this, either it might be 2 parameter, 3 parameter or 1 parameter, that is called as parameter constructor. Okay.
Okay.
Or any confusion, Raj?
No, 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 not confusion. Just I want to confirm. I have small doubt. That's it.
Yeah, basically, as you said, if I assign, if I pass these parameter here itself, that's possible, but that will be called as in another name.
Okay.
That is called as another name. If I haven't passed any parameter in C sharp, that constructor we are calling it as a default constructor. If we pass the parameter for our constructor, those are called as parameter constructor. The just name difference, by passing the parameter, we are giving two different names. Okay.
Okay,
So
madam.
so this is how, and this is method 2, method 3.
4.
And
Method
method
1.
4 I need to copy it. Control C.
How we can get yeah,
Here method 4, what I am doing is
getting different values.
here we are passing different values. So 4, right? 4 comma and
Yes. It is
JKL,
JKL,
uh,
JKL address.
JKL address. Okay, and I can pass this one. Here I can give, now I can give 5. Okay, and here I can give M N O. Okay, I can give MNO address. Okay, now if I try to execute, now I can get the different output. Previously for method 1 and method 2 and method 3, we got only same output. Now we are
Same.
passing two different set of data: 4, 5, JK, MNO, JK address and MNO address. And if I try to execute, I can get the two different outputs. So that's the advantage of a parameter constructor. Parameter constructor will help us to assign the different values to our member variables. Based on the object creation, while creating the object, we can give any type of values. It's our interest. Okay, this is our interest here.
Okay, madam.
So that is called as a parameter constructor. Let's say we just covered with the default constructor, and after that parameter constructor. So parameter constructor, just the example which I gave here, and after that we have one more type of constructor which is called as a static constructor. Let's see how this static constructor will work. Let's see how this static constructor will work here. So this is the constructor, static constructor. Okay, the constructor, if I give, okay, so the advantage of a static constructor I will explain here. So method 1 we are clear, method 2, method 3, and method 4, method 3 I'm just giving this another name as default constructor.
Default constructor.
Default constructor. For method 5 I'm giving another name as a parameter constructor. Method 4 I'm giving another name as a parameter constructor. So now it's not the method 5. So till now we have seen so how what are the ways are there to assign the values to our member variable. Now I am going
Yes.
to explain the other concept which is that different type of constructor. Okay, so So how we can execute this one is let's create three. Here I am going to give the name as static constructor. So what I'm going to do here is I'm taking only three variables: name, ID, name, and address. So I'm declaring okay. So what how I can explain for you is declare. Yeah, this is one. I'm going to take the default constructor. I'm going to declare one default constructor here. Okay. At the same time, I'm going to declare this is a default constructor here static vector static customer, this one. I'm providing the same set of input. So those values need to be static members. I can't explain this. Okay.
Then if we give static static and return type stack, it is not same, right?
Static. What is that question, Raj?
Return type static and the static constructor is not the same, and we can create object also, right here.
So this is the static constructor. Static method you are talking about.
Yeah.
Static method, we know this. If I create any static method, we no need to create the object for that particular class to call the static method. So similarly, there is a kind of static constructor here. So let me explain the difference between normal constructor and the static constructor. So in normal constructor, so whenever someone calls this one, here I'm just writing one message, different constructor, what we can call it is here what I'm doing is inside, I'm just writing one method inside default constructor, default inside default constructor. Here I'm writing same thing. So inside static constructor. Okay, I'm going to remove this all. Okay, how we can values we can able to declare customer, okay, customer C1 equal to new customer. So what I can do is so how I can okay so basically what this one customer ID customer name equal to ABC, customer address equal to address. Here I'm going to declare one more variable, public string customer ID, name and pin code and something like that I'm declaring. For this I'm giving it as a static. Here pin code equal to pin code which I'm giving is string. So okay, like this. So let me explain the concept of static constructor. So how this static constructor will help in our C# programming here is if I have any kind of static members in my class, if I want to assign the default values for them, if I have any kind of static variables in my members, sorry, static variables in my class, if I want to provide the default values for those static variables, we need a static constructor. So for this not default constructor, we can provide this value. See, let's try to do this one equal to 10. So why this one? If we try to see this while executing process, so we can able to execute it. Pin code static. How it is possible? Take pin code. Same method only. Is it possible to value assign? Static pin code. So mainly useful public This is also same. Public string, we can able to assign the val string. So there is no difference here. Succeed, execute. Yeah. So let me explain the concept here. So basically, the particular if I have the particular static member variable in my class, if I want to provide the those member variables values, so then the best way to use this is a static constructor. So before that, even if you put that public, that's fine. So before this constructor name, if you put the uh, keyword as static keyword, then it will become the static constructor. So the other advantage of the static constructor is the other advantage of static constructor in C# is so I have created two uh, constructors. One is default constructor and another one is static constructor. So in default constructor, I assign some values to my class variables, and the static constructor I am assigning the values to my static variables. But this static variable, if I try to assign the normal variables here, saying that customer ID equal to 10 something like this, it's not allowing here. Basically, static constructor will useful to assign the values only for static members. So it will allow only pin code. It will allow the assigning the values only for static variables. It will not allow to give the default values to other type of variables. So where I am trying to give the customer ID equal to 10, which is the normal member variable, which is not a static member variable. So that's why when I'm trying to assign the values to my normal member variable inside the static member variable, it is not supporting here. So that's why like we are saying that in default constructor, we can assign the values to our member variables with any type of members. Either it will be the normal member variable or static member variable. But in terms of static constructor, it is only possible to assign the default values with static members only, for static members only. So for static members, if I want to provide the default values, then we need to use this static constructor. The other advantage of the static constructor here is, see, I have one default constructor and I have one static constructor. So in main method, what we are doing is, I'm creating the object for customer class with the name C, and I'm creating another object for my customer class with the name C1. Whenever I'm trying to execute this one, so once I call my once I create the object C here, it's calling inside the static constructor. So by default, it is first calling the static constructor, and after that, it is calling the default constructor. But if you see here, when I create the another object for my class, will it call the static constructor again? So
No.
let me repeat again. So basically, what we are doing is, I have four member variables. three are normal member variable, one is static member. So I created two constructors. One is default constructor. Inside default constructor, I can assign the values for my all variables, including the static member variable. So I have the another constructor which is called a static constructor. The static constructor will only useful to provide the values for your static members. Here, what is our static member? Pin code is the static member. So to provide the value to my static member, so I can use this static constructor. So once I provide the value, in a default constructor, I have returned one method, one console.writeLine statement saying that inside default constructor. And again, in static constructor also, I mentioned that inside static constructor. Once someone call, it will print this method, and when someone object created, it will print this print method, and it will print this print method. So what we are doing in our main method is we are creating the two objects. Whenever I create the first object, how the execution flow will happen is first it will call the static constructor and it will assign the values to the pin code and it will print the output like this. Okay, and immediately it will call the default constructor. It will assign the member variable values and it will print the values saying that inside the default constructor. But again, if I create the one more object for the same class, then what will happen is this static constructor will never execute. It will only execute first time creation object only. It will execute for the first time whenever we create the object for our customer class, then only the static constructor will get execute. But this default constructor will keep on executing whenever you create the object. It might be 10 times, it might be 20 times, or it might be 100 times. Whenever, how many times you create the object for your particular class, that many times your default constructor will get execute. But static constructor will only execute once in the particular life cycle of that particular program whenever you create the first object. Whenever you create the first object only, the static constructor will get execute. Okay, so let's see the output here. So I'm going to execute this one. So which one get first call? Either static or default constructor. So default
Static.
constructor, sorry, this static constructor getting execute first here. So once it
Yeah.
execute, another immediately it will execute the default constructor. Once it both execute, again once we creating the default, once we create the another object, so our default constructor will get execute here. But our static constructor get execute only one time. Okay, so that is the advantage of this static constructor. So if there is a need of assigning the values for only one time throughout the life of that particular class, what we can do is we can use this static constructor which will first execute and it will execute only one time in that particular life cycle of a class. So that's the very good advantage of a static constructor. So let me repeat again. So I declare the member variables and at the same time I declare the two constructor. One is default constructor and another one is static constructor. So the purpose of the static constructor here is two advantages. One is the static constructor is specifically used to assign the static member variable values. The static constructor specifically used to assign the member variables of a static type. Okay, that is one advantage. Another advantage what we have is even though you have created the 100 object for your customer class, the static constructor will only execute once. First time only it will get execute. but default constructor, whenever you create the object, that default constructor will keep on executing. So that's the another advantage of a static constructor. If you want to restrict, instead of repeatedly execute that one, if you want to restrict those execution process, make that as a static constructor, then it will only execute once. So that is the static constructor. So having any questions on that? Static constructor is useful to assign the static member variables, and at the same time it will help us to avoid the repetition execution of a constructor. Okay, so those are the two advantages. So Raj or Muzaffar, do you guys having any questions?
But here we are using two times of execution of default constructor, right?
Yes, correct.
But
So
in
yeah,
that case, won't be any. In that case, how can you say that it's avoiding repeat of execution of same constructor?
so but a static constructor is executing only one time, right?
Okay.
Static constructor, the difference, that is the difference I'm saying. If it is a default constructor, how many object you create, that many times this default constructor will execute. So if it is a
Okay.
static constructor, only first time whenever create the first object for our class, that time only it will get executed, and from next time itself, from next time onwards, it will never execute. Only one time it will execute, that is also whenever you create the first object for your class. In that also it will first execute before the default constructor. In that
Okay.
process also, in that execution process also, static constructor will get first execute, and after that default constructor will execute. So that's where even though, see, first we declare this method and second we declare this method. So whenever I execute the program, first which one is calling? Static constructor is calling. Then
Yeah.
this default constructor is calling. And after, again default constructor is calling, because we are creating another object. Okay. So our output also will come like this. Which one first execute? Inside the static constructor, means static constructor got first execute, and after that default constructor, and after that this default constructor will get execute. Okay, so this is the another type of constructor what we have. So let's move to the another topic here. Okay, so another topic what we have is a copy constructor. Another type of constructor what we have is a copy constructor. Let's see how we can use this one. So copy constructor. So here itself what we can do is remove comment these three, copy this two. Copy constructor. So I'm declaring three parameter: customer ID, customer name, customer address. Here public customer, I'm passing the values integer, or else let's take this one. So integer ID, string name and string address. Now what I'm going to do is here ID I'm passing it as 1, string ABC, and address passing it as ABC address. Okay. Now this is we already seen, which is the parameter constructor by passing the values. Now let's see the copy constructor. So how we can declare a copy constructor here is public same customer. Here I'm giving this as a customer again, customer C. Customer C. Here how we can pass this one, C dot customer ID, C dot customer name, C dot customer address. Okay, so how we can use this one? Like this. C. Okay, let's see how it will work here. Basically I first declare one object. I first declare one constructor with which is a parameter constructor, which is taking 3 parameters. One is integer, string, and the address. Integer, string, and address. So I'm assigning the values like this. So I'm creating the object by passing one ABC address. Okay. Now what will happen? This one will become available here. This name will be available here, and this address will be available here. And here we are assigning. Now the intention is I already have the one object with the name C. I want to reuse the values of that particular object. I want to reuse the object of I want to reuse the values of that particular object. For the C, now the value says 1 ABC address. Now the intention is I want to create one more object, but I don't want to use the values repeatedly here, 1 ABC address. I don't want to do like this. So because it's already available in my C object. Okay. Now the intention is I want to reuse the C object as a parameter to my constructor, to my another constructor. So that's where we are using the copy constructor. Copy constructor means we are copying the object of another we are copying the object of a particular class into the another one. So here our object name is C, which is having one ABC address as a values. Now I want to reuse my values with the C1 object. In C1 object, I want to use this C object values. Okay, now I can pass it. So now both the values will have the same values. If I call the let's see how it will work here, console.writeLine. So prod customer ID 0, customer name 1, customer address 2. C dot ID, C dot name, C dot address. Now again what I'm going to do is this address C1. Here I want to use the C1 object. C1.
It's like same like default constructor only.
No, it's not default constructor. Let me explain you. Okay.
Calling.
So basically, see how we are using is I have I have defined one constructor which is a parameter constructor. So the purpose of this parameter constructor is assigning the values to your member variables as per the passing values. So if you pass 1, 1 will come here, it will assign. If you pass 2, 2 will come here and it will assign. Now the intention is I want to create the another object. I want to pass the same values like this. I want to create the another object. I want to pass the same value like this. So as I have the 3 parameter here, I can pass it. If I assume that if I have the 10 to 15 parameters, instead of repeatedly passing this one, sometimes what we need to use is as this C already have these values. The C object already have one ABC address. Instead of repeating this all the 3 values again and again, what you can do is simply if you use this C as a parameter for your constructor, then automatically the C will also this C already have the one ABC and ABC address. I can directly use this C this particular ID and this particular name and this particular address. I no need to pass these parameters again. Instead of passing that one, I am passing the object name itself. So that is called as a copy constructor. So the copy constructor will useful if I want to copy the object value of one object to the another object. Here there are two objects. One is C, another one is C2. Sorry, C and C1. The C value we are going to use into the C1. So that is called as copy construct. We are copying the C value, C object values into the C1 object. So that's where we are calling this as a copy constructor. Instead of providing these values again, as I already have my values in C object, instead of passing these 3 values again here, I can simply pass this C object here. So that's where I can have the same output. So if I execute this one, both the values of both the output I have the same values. So here also with this C constructor, sorry, C object, I have the same values. With the C1 object also I have the same value because we copy the object value of C to the C1. So that's where we are having we are calling this as the copy constructor. So how we are declaring the copy constructor here is, so similar to the syntax is very similar. Instead of passing the parameter, we are passing the class name and its object. We are passing the class name and the object here. So that's where we can use this copy constructor. Okay, so if I already have the one object, I want to reuse my object to the another object, then the best possible way what we have in our C# is a copy constructor. Okay, so
Yes, madam.
so Muzaffar, can you please explain what is this copy constructor?
We are uh, we are passing this same object what is it, this one for the copy constructor one. We are passing the same object name for this C1
No,
so that it copies the.
yes, that's correct. But explanation is somehow we need to change it. So if I want to, or if we want to use the one object value into the another object value, then we need to use this copy constructor. So I have two objects here. C is one object. I want to use the values of C into the C1. Okay, so then instead of passing these
Okay.
values again and again, if I directly pass this C as a parameter for my particular constructor, here I can declare the object for this and I can use the values like this. Instead of directly assigning the values with the object, I I'm calling those values.
Okay.
So that's where we can call it as a copy constructor. Copy
Okay.
constructor is useful to copy the one object values to the another object. So that's
Copy.
the is useful to copy the one object values to the another object.
The Madan bhai, where your cursor is there above the top one is the parameter constructor. Huh?
This is
Am I correct?
yeah, this is parameter constructor. This is the
Okay.
copy constructor.
Copy constructor. One object to the another object.
Yeah, we can copy or we can reuse the one object to the another object, which is called as copy constructor.
Okay, Madan bhai.
Okay, so that is
Also, the copy constructor can be used for static constructor also.
no, static constructor will only take the static values.
Okay, fine.
It will not take the normal values here. So this is the thing. And other constructor what we have is a private constructor. So other constructor what we have is a private constructor. So let's see how we can use this private constructor. Okay, so let's go to this. Other type of constructor what we have is a private constructor. So till now we have seen all public constructors. So now this is time to see the private constructor. Private constructor like this. Okay. So the purpose of the private constructor is to avoid the creation of a object. To avoid the creation of a object for a particular class. So if I don't want to create any object for my particular class, then what I need to do is I need to declare one particular private constructor in my class. It will allow, it will stop or it will restrict to create the object for your class. See, as I declare the private constructor for my particular class, so it is not allowed to create any object here. Let's remove this one and start with the empty constructor. Here just remove this. This is a C1 constructor. So it's saying that is inaccessible to the to its protection level. Okay, so if I have a class, there is some situation where you need to avoid to create the object for your class. There is a peculiar situation in our programming. In that time, if you want to avoid the others to create the object for your class, what you need to do is you need to create one particular constructor, which is a private constructor in your class, which will stop creation of an object for that particular class. So as I declare the private constructor here, so it is not allowing me to create the object. So that's the where we are using this private constructor. Private constructor will help us to avoid the creation of an object for a particular class. There are some situations where we need to use this private class. For example, I have a class where I want to make use of this private constructor to avoid the creation of an object. So that means if someone try to create the object for my particular class, it is not possible to create the object. So that's where we need to use this private constructor. So the usage of private constructor is to avoid the creation of a particular object. So the particular class object, that's the called as a private constructor. So that's what the object class can only be created class itself. So that's what we have written the statement here. Constructor can become accessible only those kind of access modifiers. So the other thing what we have is static constructor. We'll see this static constructor. We'll stop it. So static and the abstract classes. So let's see one example of a static class. So I'm going to create one class. So my class name is product. Okay, so this is a normal class where I can have public int product ID, public string product name. Two variables I have declared. This is a normal class where I can have any kind of methods, or where I can have any kind of constructors I have, and I can create the object for my class, something like this: product p equal to new product. Okay, something like that. I can create the object and I can assign the values, or I can create a constructor to assign the value. So that all kind of operation we can able to do with this normal class. So there is a different type of class available in C#, which is called as the static class. So how it will work, how we can create a static class here is, so in front of that particular class, you need to use this static keyword. So it's similarly to our static method. So if I have a method in front of that, if I give the static keyword, it became the static method. Okay. So similarly, if I have a class in front of, if I give the static keyword, it will become the static class here. In if I create a static class, so again, if I have a static method, there is no need of creation of a object. I can directly call my static method with the help of class name. Similarly, if I have the static class, it doesn't allow to create the object for our class. See, so cannot declare a variable type, this one product. So as I declare my class as a static class, it is not allowing me to create the object. Then how we can work with your member variables is directly with your class name. So our class name is product dot sorry, public. So these are all having static members only. So static. Inside the class, we can have all static members only. So the member variables inside the class must be the static members. Dot. Now I can able to call product ID. I can able to assign values here. Product dot product name equal to this one. Whatever the values I want to give, I can give it. Okay. So this simply how we can work with the static class here is, if I have a normal class, I can do operation as usual. I can declare the member variables. I can declare the methods inside the class. I can declare the static variables. I can declare the constructors, and I can create the object for my class, and I can work as smooth as which we discussed previous sessions. So if I have a static class, how we can declare a static class here is in front of that class keyword, if you use the keyword as static, this class will become the static class. If I declare a static class, all members in my static class will need to be have static methods or static members. So in static class, I need to have only static members and the static methods. So once I declare the static class, how we can work with the static class here is, and we know like static class will not allow to create the object. Then how we can work with our member variables or member methods in our C sharp is by the class name itself. So by the class name itself, we can directly call the member variables and we can assign the values. This is how the static class will work here. Okay. So,
Okay.
Muzaffar or Raj, can you please explain what is difference between normal class and the static class?
In a static class, we use a keyword as a static before our class name,
Mm-hmm.
and we use the member variables with the name as a keyword static in front of the public, and
Yeah.
we are calling our member variables through our directly through our class name,
Yeah, class
through
name.
our class
Yeah.
name through is product dot calling our member.
Yeah. So basically, how we can explain here is a static. If a class which is having a static keyword is called a static class, and if I have the static class, all member variables or all member methods in that particular class need to be static members only. Okay. Once I declare a static class, so it's not possible to create the object for our static class. Then how we can access our member variables or member methods? So as it is a
Okay.
static class, we can access our member variables or member methods directly with the class name itself. So our class name is product and our member variables is member product ID equal to 1. Product dot product name equal to whatever the values we want to pass, we can pass it. So that's the use of the static class here. Okay. So that's all for today's session, Muzaffar.
Okay.
So